Hello, my name is Sharon, and I've returned to share with you some of the folklore and traditions that took place after the 12 days of Christmas in the month of January. Well, for many of us, the past year has been very, very hard, what with the pandemic, restrictions, and lockdowns. So it was pretty understandable that at Christmas, many people decided that they would leave their Christmas decorations up for much longer, beyond the 12 days of Christmas. But what they didn't know, and I didn't know until quite recently, by doing so, they were upholding a much older tradition, that of an ancient festival that takes place on the 2nd of February, the festival of Candlemas. However, before that happened, at that time, if you wanted to decorate your home in readiness for Christmas, it was considered bad luck to do so before the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, particularly if you brought into the house ivy and holly together. It meant that you and everyone else living in the same home would have bad luck in the year that followed. However, on Christmas Eve itself, you could decorate your home with as much greenery as you wanted: holly, ivy, sage and rosemary and pine. But the air must have been quite pungent, quite aromatic. And you could also bring in a little bit of mistletoe to add underneath the kissing bough. Come 12th night, though, if you had some festive greenery still in place, you left it there until the 2nd of February, when you'd celebrate Candlemas, a festival dedicated to the Virgin Mary for that period that followed her giving birth to the Christ child. Candlemas was also the beginning of the return of spring. It had much older origins too, pre-Christian, and was once considered the festival of light, that halfway point between that of the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, and the spring equinox. There was even some superstitions attached to Candlemas. For example, the snowdrop, that we all know is the harbinger of spring. You see it growing there, poking up through the snow in January. But if you brought it into the house during Candlemas, this symbolized either a parting or the death of someone you knew and loved. Well, before Candlemas took place, you had the end of Christmastide, 12th night, which was the last feast day of the season. This was the day of the Epiphany, the 6th of January, when on that day the three magi, the three wise men, visited the Christ child as he lay there in the manger in the stable in Bethlehem. They brought with them the gifts of frankincense, myrrh, and gold to give to him. But did you know, and I didn't know until again recently, that the 5th of January, the night of the Epiphany, was once celebrated as Old Christmas Eve? That was according to the Julian calendar. Well, this was replaced in 1752 when an act of parliament was passed, replacing the Julian calendar with that of the Gregorian. It trimmed back the old year by about a dozen days, bringing Christmas Eve forward to the 24th of December that we all know and celebrate. But old habits die hard, and many rural communities in the county of Worcestershire, as well as other counties, continue to celebrate Old Christmas Eve and Day on the 5th and the 6th of January, the Epiphany. In fact, this persisted well into the 19th century and even into the early part of the 20th century, when Roy Palmer, who's a very well-known folklorist, who's written a wonderful book on the folklore of Worcestershire, noted that a local writer, T.J. Parker, had written that Old Christmas Eve was still being celebrated in 1902 in Ashton under Hill. Well, come with the passing of Christmas was the return to work. And for women, they were the first ones back on the 7th of January, Distaff Day. Back in the Middle Ages, the distaff, or the spindle, was symbolic of women's work, that is, the spinning of wool and flax. But as the centuries passed, the interpretation was widened, so it included all household chores. It allowed men a bit of a longer lie-in until the first Monday after the Epiphany, Plough Monday, which marked also the beginning of the new agricultural year. For those that worked the land, the men and the boys, they would get hold of a plough, they would decorate it with ribbons and foliage, and they would pull it through the streets of the towns, the hamlets, and the villages. They would dress in white shirts, and they would be collecting money, and they'd be singing songs, and there would be Morris dancers, and either an old woman or a young boy dressed up as an old woman, as Bessie, and there'd be a man chosen for a fool. Possibly these were remnants of the earlier medieval celebrations. In Norfolk, they had the plough pudding, which was a boiled pudding of meat and onions that they would devour on the day. And being the beginning of the new agricultural year, they might even plough the first furrows into the fields, hoping for a good harvest in the following year. Well, those are just some of the folklore and traditions that took place in the month of January following Christmas. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope to be back again to share some more folklore and maybe some stories with you. Thank you for listening.